Good morning, everyone. Seems like we're going to be doing this remote learning thing for longer than we anticipated. So, I actually have to teach you some stuff. So, get comfortable because it's time for today's lesson. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you so that we can get started. Okay. Before we get started, why don't you make sure that your phone is on Do Not Disturb and it's set away from you so that you can listen to what I'm saying. Um, and let's go ahead and start. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about the imperfect. My objectives of this lesson are to give an overview of the uses of the imperfect and then review the forms of the imperfect. You learned these last year, so hopefully this is just a review and a reminder. You'll be happy to know that they are much easier than the forms of the preterite, so it will be much more accessible. For this lesson, your materials that you're going to need are your yellow preterite chart and a pen or a pencil. And that is it. Just a quick reminder, your chart is yellow, but it looks like this on the front, and it should look like this on the back. So our objective of the day today is to fill out the back of this chart, and then we're going to start going systematically through the uses of the imperfect one by one so that they're not confusing for you. So go ahead and pause this while you get your stuff together and then start playing when you are ready to go. The big idea that we are going to work on, and we're not going, unfortunately, we won't get into as much depth as I would like because we're going to be doing this remotely. So I won't really be able to do this in the way that I want to. But the big idea is that the preterite, el pretérito, is used for single completed actions in the past. It's like a lightning bolt. There occurred a storm, there occurred an earthquake, it happened and it was over, flash and gone. The imperfect, however, is more like a cloud. It kind of like didn't really have a distinct beginning or end. It formed and then it disintegrated, it floated in, it floated out. There's really no distinct hard edges where it began and where it ended. So the preterite is a lightning bolt, single completed actions in the past. Write that on your yellow chart. The imperfect is a cloud. We can remember the uses of the imperfect with the acronym WAITers. And I'm going to go through each one of those uses. I will go through them out of order. So follow along with me and write them on your chart. The most important thing is S, which is setting the scene. It's again going back to that idea that the imperfect did not have a distinct beginning or end. Um, for example, había un árbol en frente de la casa. There was a tree in front of the house. That's not a single completed action. It's not like the tree appeared one day and was gone the next. Era una mañana perfecta. It was a perfect morning. That's just setting the scene and telling you what was happening more or less. You can also remember from last year, we talked about routines and repetition as a use of the imperfect. And we talked about this cuando era niño. Cada día me levantaba a las 5. Every day I used to get up at 5 o'clock. This is another way that you can set the scene and you can start to tell a story in the past, is with the R for routine or repetition. And it basically all comes down to the I, which is for interrupted actions. When you're going to talk about what was happening when you're setting the scene, you're setting up that a single completed action is about to occur. You use the imperfect to introduce that interrupted action. We did this last year as well. Yo caminaba cuando me caí. I was walking when I fell. When I fell is the single completed action. Caminaba is the interrupted action. It's what was happening. It's setting the scene and telling you what was going on. Nosotros dormíamos cuando hubo una tormenta. We were sleeping when there occurred a storm. So, one of the ways that we can set the scene is the W for weather. We talked about this a lot a couple weeks ago when we were in class. Hacía mucho sol ayer. It was really sunny yesterday. That's a way that you can set the scene. It's also an action in the past without a distinct beginning and end. And that's why we use the imperfect to talk about the weather. Llovía mucho. It rained a lot last month. That actually, I could see a compelling argument to use the preterite or the imperfect. It was raining a lot, or it rained. Um, but either way, you're setting the scene in the past, telling about something that didn't have a distinct beginning or end. Telling time is another use that we went through when we were together in class. This is another way to set the scene. Eran las 12 de la noche. It was 12 o'clock at night. Whenever you're going to tell the time of what time it was, you're always setting up that something is going to interrupt it. So if you're going to tell the time, you have to use the imperfecto. A is for age, and this is something that we're going to go into more depth on. Lola tenía 2 años cuando llegó a Hopedale. Lola was 2 years old when she arrived in Hopedale. The fact that she was 2 years old doesn't really have a distinct beginning or end. It sets the scene, and it is an interrupted action. Her being 2 years old was interrupted by her arriving in Hopedale. Yo tenía 5 años en 1988. I was 5 years old in 1988. That's a true story. It was a good time. E is for emotions. La profesora estaba enojada. Your emotions very rarely have a distinct beginning and end. So when we talk about how you were feeling in the past, we always use the imperfect. And that includes if you're using estar plus an adjective or tener plus a noun. So estar enojada, tener miedo, tener hambre, tener sed, any of those things. And that is the end of the uses. So feel free to pause, take a break, do what you need to do, and then we will go ahead and get started talking about the forms of the imperfect. The great news is that the forms of the imperfect have very, very few irregulars. There are 3 irregular verbs in the imperfect, and that is it. The preterite has so many irregulars, super annoying, super confusing. But the imperfect, most verbs are regular. So pause this and write down the forms of your AR verbs in the imperfect. Take off the AR, add on aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. Your ER and IR verbs have the same exact forms, which is great. Take off the ER, take off the IR, and add ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. Make sure there's an accent mark on the first I in every single form. Pause this while you get caught up. Then we move on to ir, to go. Please make sure in your notes that you write that ir is to go, because you're going to be tempted to use these endings for your IR verbs. Don't get confused that ir and IR verbs are 2 different things. Ir likes to pretend that it's an AR verb in the imperfecto. Iba, ibas, iba, íbamos with an accent mark, ibais, iban. Ser, you remember from last year, cuando era niño, goes to era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. And ver is considered irregular, but the only thing that's irregular about it is that usually when you conjugate a verb, you take off the ER and put on the ending, but with ver, you only take off the R and add your ER endings. So this goes to veía, veías, veía, veíamos, which has so many vowels, veíais, and veían. I guess that's the other reason why it's considered irregular, because nosotros, vosotros, and well, I guess there's a lot of vowels. There's way too many vowels in a row. And that's why it's considered irregular. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of this first lesson. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you. Um, that is the end of our first lesson. It's the forms of the imperfect and a general overview of the uses. I hope that you feel free to go back and watch this again if you need to, or find other practice, other explanations on YouTube if you need some more explanation of some things. But this is a good start to get some notes down. I hope everyone is doing well. I miss you, and I will be in touch with some more specific assignments very soon.